She used to say, "Your calls are always my top priority," until the day her first love returned from abroad. By the 27th missed call, she was slicing a birthday cake for her lover, while Ethan Hayes clutched the restaurant reservation text. Staring at his reflection in the glass, an unopened engagement ring box lay beside the cold steak on the table. After being discharged from the hospital, the first thing Ethan Hayes did was go to the phone store to get a new SIM card. He still kept the old card inserted in his backup phone, using it only for unimportant verification codes, and to see when Sophia Davis would realize she had lost him. Of course, she didn't notice right away. She was too busy accompanying Liam Cooper to various press conferences, introducing him to various contacts, and playing her role as the most reliable Sophia. These details were kindly provided by Liam Cooper's social media posts. He seemed particularly keen on showcasing Sophia Davis' special attention towards him. Every photo, every caption silently announced something. Ethan Hayes, meanwhile, was busy packing his belongings, contacting moving companies, and mass submitting his resume on job search websites to better take care of Sophia Davis' daily needs. 3 years ago, when her career was on the rise, Ethan Hayes resigned from his promising design job, willingly becoming her supportive partner. Now, Ethan Hayes no longer wanted the identity of a supportive partner. He wanted to pick up his profession again. A week later, Sophia Davis returned from an out-of-town business trip, looking disheveled from travel. As usual, she tossed her suitcase into the entryway and familiarly called out, "Ethan, I am hungry, make me some noodles." Her voice carried a hint of travel weariness, and her usual sense of entitlement. Ethan Hayes came out of the home office, holding an interview skills book, and looked at her with a calm expression. "There are many options on the food delivery app," he said, "or you can make something yourself." Sophia Davis froze, the weariness on her face instantly replaced by bewilderment. It was the first time Ethan Hayes hadn't rushed to the kitchen the moment she spoke. She frowned, her eyes filled with scrutiny and displeasure. "What's wrong? Did someone upset you?" "No, just a little tired." Ethan Hayes' tone was flat, revealing no emotion. "Tired?" She scoffed, as if hearing an absurd joke. "What could possibly make you tired at home? Stop throwing a fit and make dinner. I am truly hungry." Ethan Hayes didn't move. He simply lifted his chin, gesturing towards the suitcase by her feet. "You should pack your own suitcase too. I have things to do." With that, Ethan Hayes turned and went back to the home office, closed the door, shutting out her probing gaze. Sophia Davis was left standing alone in the living room, her face fluctuating between anger and frustration. That evening, she eventually ordered food delivery herself, and, for the first time in her life, she packed her own business trip suitcase. Before falling asleep, she tried to hug Ethan Hayes from behind, her tone much softer than during the day. "Ethan, I know I've been neglecting you lately. Don't be angry anymore. Your birthday is in a few days. I booked the Constellation Room to celebrate properly with you." The Constellation Room, the most difficult to reserve top romantic restaurant in the city. Ethan Hayes had mentioned it to her countless times, but each time, she had brushed him off, citing work. If it had been before, Ethan Hayes would probably have immediately softened, been moved to tears, and felt that she still cared for him. But now, he simply gently pushed away her encircling arm, his voice utterly calm. "Well, see," he said, "I might not have much of an appetite lately." In the dark, Ethan Hayes could clearly feel her body stiffen, and the hand resting on his shoulder paused. Perhaps Sophia Davis still thought he was sulking, but she didn't know that he was done with her. The next morning, Ethan Hayes left for his interview, used to wearing loungewear and an apron. He felt a surprising unfamiliarity when putting on a formal suit again. Sophia Davis stood at the wardrobe door, her gaze sweeping over Ethan Hayes with a familiar look of admiration. "Ethan, it's been a long time since I saw you in formal wear." She reached out to put her arm around his waist, but Ethan Hayes instinctively moved sideways to avoid her. This action stunned them both. He used to love it when she wrapped her arms around his waist, saying it made her feel he loved every part of her. Now, his body reacted before his mind. He had already begun to resist her touch. After breakfast, they walked towards the entryway, one after the other. She still looked slender and beautiful in her dress, as she adjusted her skirt in front of the full-length mirror. Their reflections appeared, she in a hazy blue two-piece dress, Ethan Hayes in a grey suit. They still looked like a match made in heaven, but Ethan Hayes knew that beneath this facade of a perfect match, some things had long since changed. The interview went more smoothly than expected. The sun was just right as Ethan Hayes walked out of the office building, Passing by a beautifully decorated sushi restaurant, he remembered how he, who used to love sushi, hadn't eaten it for years because Sophia Davis disliked raw food. Pushing the door open, Ethan Hayes followed the waiter to a window seat. Ethan Hayes opened the menu, just as he was deciding between salmon and tuna sashimi, when he heard a familiar voice. Looking up, it was Sophia Davis walking in, holding Liam Cooper's hand. Liam Cooper intimately swayed Sophia Davis' arm, his voice almost a whine. "Sophia, you still remember this place? We used to love coming here in college." Today, Liam Cooper was wearing a white suit, his tie the exact hazy blue as Sophia Davis' dress. Everything seemed meticulously planned. The slight glimmer of hope Ethan Hayes had felt that morning while looking in the mirror with Sophia Davis, now burst like a soap bubble in the sun, shattering with the slightest touch. As they passed Ethan Hayes' table, Sophia Davis' gaze suddenly froze. Ethan Hayes quickly lowered his head, flipping through the menu, pretending not to see her. Out of the corner of his eye, Ethan Hayes saw Sophia Davis' steps noticeably hesitate. Liam Cooper followed her gaze. "What's wrong?" he asked. Before Sophia Davis could speak, he intimately pulled her arm, walking forward. "Come on, didn't you say you'd have tuna sashimi with me today?" Ethan Hayes picked up his teacup and took a sip, glimpsing Sophia Davis repeatedly looking back as she was pulled away. The waiter led them towards a private dining room deeper inside. Ethan Hayes stopped looking at them, lowered his head, and ordered a sashimi platter from the waiter. A few minutes later, his phone vibrated in his bag. It was his company sending onboarding materials. Ethan Hayes was about to open it when a new update from Liam Cooper's social media posts suddenly popped up. In the photo collage, the first was a close-up of two clasped hands. The caption read, "5 years later, the taste hasn't changed, and neither have the people." The comment section below was already buzzing. "Is this official? Ms. Davis finally waited for her first love to return. When are you inviting us to the wedding?" Liam Cooper replied to all with a shy emoji. Ethan Hayes put down his phone, and the sashimi platter arrived. The salmon's marbling was distinct. He dipped a piece in wasabi soy sauce, and put it in his mouth. The spiciness stung his nostrils, yet surprisingly, he didn't shed a tear. As Ethan Hayes walked out of the restaurant, his phone vibrated again. It was a message from Sophia Davis. "Ethan, a new cake shop opened on the east side. Do you want me to bring you something?" Ethan Hayes stared at the screen, suddenly remembering that for the past 3 years, she would occasionally bring back cakes from the east side, matcha mill crepe, chocolate lava cake, cheesecake, each time a different flavor, but all from the east side. Ethan Hayes had never told her he liked sweets, nor had he ever mentioned the east side until last week. When Ethan Hayes saw on Liam Cooper's social media posts that his apartment was on the east side, he realized that every cake was a lie. Every moment he thought was sweet was just Sophia Davis' excuse to see Liam Cooper. Ethan Hayes didn't reply to Sophia Davis' message. Instead, he contacted a real estate agent to put their current house on the market. When they were most in love, Sophia Davis had put only Ethan Hayes' name on the property deed, saying she wanted to give him complete security. Now, that sense of security had truly been fulfilled. After arranging things with the agent, Ethan Hayes didn't go home. Instead, he took a taxi to his college roommate's house. In the kitchen, his roommate looked at Ethan Hayes, cooking skillfully, with a look of disbelief. "You used to be the most pampered young master in our dorm," he said. "What on earth happened to make you change so much?" Ethan Hayes lowered his head, scrubbing the wok. He didn't know how to explain that the calluses on his hands were from learning to make soup for Sophia Davis, or how to say that he hadn't been to a live music venue in 3 years because Sophia Davis had once said it was too loud. Ethan Hayes let out a silent chuckle. After setting down the spatula, he looked at his friend. "Nothing much," he said, "but it won't happen again." When Ethan Hayes returned home the next day, Sophia Davis was sitting on the living room couch, still wearing yesterday's dress. On the dining table, a meticulously decorated frosted cake had "Happy 5th Anniversary" written on it, in cute, playful lettering. Seeing Ethan Hayes, she abruptly stood up, her eyes bloodshot. "Where were you? I called you over 70 times, and you didn't answer a single one. Do you know how worried I was? Do you even remember what day today is?" Ethan Hayes looked at her near hysterical state, feeling no ripple in his heart. Once upon a time, every night Sophia Davis spent with Liam Cooper, Ethan Hayes had also frantically questioned her like this, but all he got in return were her tired sighs and impatient dismissals. "Ethan, stop it, can't you be a little more sensible? Can't you have some compassion?" At that time, Ethan Hayes always thought if he were just a little more sensible, a little more considerate, he could earn her appreciation. Looking back now, it was nothing but wishful thinking. Ethan Hayes' voice was so calm it felt unfamiliar even to himself. I've been busy. Sophia Davis was stunned by Ethan Hayes' words. She seemed to realize something, and a hint of guilt appeared on her face. Ethan, did you see something yesterday? She began. You've misunderstood. Liam and I. Ethan Hayes raised his hand to interrupt her explanation, and fumbled in his bag for the property transfer agreement. Sophia Davis had once said she didn't want the words breakup to ever come between them, but if Ethan Hayes ever truly intended to leave her, he should just sell the house, and she would understand what he meant. Just as he was about to push the transfer agreement across to her, Sophia Davis suddenly called out to him, Ethan. She took out a beautifully wrapped gift box, and carefully opened it, revealing a pair of diamond cufflinks inside. Ethan, I had these custom made, as our 5th anniversary gift. Ethan Hayes didn't take the gift. Instead, his gaze fell on the movie tickets in the corner of the coffee table, *Before Sunrise*. That was the first movie they watched together in a private screening room when they first met. Ethan Hayes remembered that night Sophia Davis held his hand, and said, from now on, we'll rewatch it together every anniversary, for the first few years. Ethan Hayes had deeply etched this promise into his heart, preparing gifts a month in advance, afraid to miss a single second. But now, he had even forgotten that today was their anniversary. Ethan Hayes reached out and took the cufflinks, placing them casually on the coffee table. Thank you, he said. I've been busy, and didn't prepare anything for you. Ethan Hayes' tone was cold and distant. Sophia Davis realized he hadn't just been unprepared, but had forgotten their anniversary entirely. Her gaze lingered on Ethan Hayes for a few seconds. He could clearly see her eyelashes tremble. Her eyes slid from his neatly cut hair to his professional suit, finally settling on his bare ring finger. It's fine. She suddenly forced a smile, the curve of her lips strained. Your birthday is coming up soon. Well, celebrate properly then. I've already booked a table at the Constellation Room. Didn't you say you wanted to celebrate your birthday there? I had someone wait in line for 3 months to finally get that reservation. Sophia Davis' voice deliberately softened, with the coaxing tone Ethan Hayes was familiar with. Whenever he used to get angry, she would use this voice to soothe him. Ethan Hayes looked at her expectant eyes and finally nodded, putting the property transfer agreement back in his bag. Then let's talk about it on my birthday. 5 years of their relationship, having a breakup meal, would be a dignified close to this relationship. On his birthday, Sophia Davis had clearly dressed up specifically for the occasion. She was wearing the latest Armani spring collection, holding a large bouquet of lilies. Her smile, however, froze the moment she saw Ethan Hayes' outfit. Her gaze fell on the hoodie and jeans she had once said she hated most. Why are you dressed like this? As expected, she frowned, but quickly shifted to a gentle tone. But as long as you're happy. Ethan Hayes calmly arranged the property transfer agreement in his bag, not paying attention to her little gestures. This outfit indeed didn't align with her aesthetic, but wearing it, Ethan Hayes felt like he had found his true self again. Not the calm and composed version she preferred, but Ethan Hayes, who could think independently and had his own preferences. The neon lights of the Constellation Room shimmered in the twilight. Ethan Hayes had once eagerly anticipated celebrating his birthday here, but standing at the entrance now, his heart was as calm as stagnant water. Sophia Davis, familiar with the place, led them to a window seat. From outside the window, the entire city's night view spread out before them. She opened the menu and recommended to Ethan Hayes, the foie gras here is very famous, and the truffle pasta. The waiter smiled and interjected, this lady knows our dishes so well, she must be a regular, right? Sophia Davis' expression froze for a moment, and she guiltily avoided Ethan Hayes' eyes. Ethan Hayes, however, acted as if he heard nothing, calmly closing the menu. I'll have a medium rare steak with mushroom sauce, he said. For appetizer, a Caesar salad, no croutons. During the meal, Sophia Davis kept trying to find topics to ease the awkward atmosphere, from company updates to recent movies. She even brought up plans to take Ethan Hayes on a vacation to the Maldives. Ethan Hayes merely nodded occasionally, focusing on cutting the steak on his plate. A familiar voice suddenly interjected, Sophia. Liam Cooper stood by their table, wearing a casual suit, like a wild lily standing aloof from the world. Sophia Davis' dinner knife scraped against her plate with a harsh sound. She looked at Ethan Hayes, then at Liam Cooper, her expression so awkward it was almost comical. Ethan Hayes slowly wiped his mouth, thoughtfully helping her out of the situation. You two have something to discuss, right? He said. Don't mind me. Please feel free. Sophia Davis' face changed color several times, but she eventually got up and walked towards Liam Cooper. They stood by the champagne bar, about 10 feet away. Ethan Hayes saw Liam Cooper's hand rest on her shoulder. In less than a minute, Sophia Davis returned. Liam Cooper stood there, frozen for a few seconds, then angrily left the restaurant. Ethan Hayes was somewhat surprised. In such situations before, he was always the one left behind. Sophia Davis' hesitant manner felt very unfamiliar to Ethan Hayes. Ethan, she began. Ethan Hayes gently interrupted her explanation, lowering his head to continue eating. Your steak is getting cold, he said. He had no more patience to listen to her explanations. Ethan Hayes told himself silently, in 10 more minutes, once the property transfer agreement was signed, everything would be over. For the latter half of the meal, Sophia Davis visibly relaxed a lot, even talking about redecorating the home office. Ethan Hayes offered a cooperative smile, occasionally assenting with a few words, watching the delight in her eyes become increasingly evident when the dessert arrived. Ethan Hayes felt the time was right. He took a folder from his briefcase. Sophia Davis was completely relaxed now. She asked with a smile, "What is this?" Ethan Hayes opened the document and pointed to the signature line. "The property transfer agreement. You just need to sign here," he said. "Once the house is sold, we can part ways amicably." The knife and fork in Sophia Davis' hand clattered onto the menu, making a sharp sound. Her expression froze for a few seconds, then she frantically grabbed Ethan Hayes' hand. "Ethan, have you misunderstood something?" she pleaded. "Liam Cooper and I are really just ordinary friends. I can explain. Liam Cooper and I just..." Seeing Sophia Davis in such a state of panic, a state he had never witnessed before, Ethan Hayes simply calmly pushed the divorce papers in front of her. "Sign it," he said. "Let's be dignified and part ways amicably." She abruptly stood up, her chair scraping loudly across the floor. Guests at several nearby tables turned to look. Sophia Davis then realized her outburst, and lowered her voice. "Ethan, can we go outside and talk?" Ethan Hayes was pulled out by his wrist. On the empty patio, the night breeze made him feel even more clear-headed. Sophia Davis suddenly hugged him tightly, with a force that made him ache. Her voice was choked with sobs. "I can't live without you. Please don't leave me," she pleaded. "I only love you. I can't live without you." Her body heat came through the thin fabric of his clothes, that warmth that once brought him comfort. Now he only wanted to break free quickly. Ethan Hayes forcefully broke free from her embrace, took a step back, creating distance between them. "You're too emotional right now. We can talk when you've calmed down." With that, Ethan Hayes turned and walked away, his steps unwavering. Behind him, he heard her uncontrolled cry, "Ethan Hayes." Her voice filled with panic and pleading. But Ethan Hayes didn't stop, nor did he look back. Walking straight to the elevator, as the elevator doors closed, he watched Sophia Davis disappear completely from his sight. After Ethan Hayes left, Sophia Davis stood on the restaurant's patio for a long time. The night breeze messed up her carefully styled hair, but she seemed oblivious. She pulled a pack of cigarettes from her pocket, and, with slightly trembling fingers, pulled out a cigarette. The lighter clicked a few times before it finally lit. The glowing tip of the cigarette flickered in the darkness, just like her wavering heart. One after another, the ground was quickly littered with cigarette butts. Once the pack of cigarettes was completely empty, she extinguished the last cigarette, as if making a firm decision, and strode towards the parking lot. 20 minutes later, her car stopped below Liam Cooper's apartment building. During the dozens of seconds the elevator ascended, she kept digging her nails into her palm, but it did nothing to calm her. The doorbell rang for a long time before Liam Cooper finally came to open the door. When Liam Cooper opened the door, he was shirtless, with drops of unwiped water still glistening on his upper body from a shower. He strained his body with all his might to make his chest and abs appear in their best state. The moment he saw Sophia Davis, his eyes immediately lit up. He grabbed Sophia Davis' wrist and pulled her inside. "Sophia," he exclaimed, "what brings you here so late? Come in, sit down." His fingers deliberately brushed lightly against her palm, a small gesture they used to share in college. But this time, Sophia Davis abruptly pulled her hand away. She stood at the doorway, unmoving, interrupting Liam Cooper's enthusiasm. "No need," she said. "I came to tell you that we shouldn't see each other anymore." Liam Cooper's smile vanished instantly. "Sophia, what happened?" he asked. "Did your boyfriend say something?" He reached out to grab Sophia Davis' sleeve, but she sidestepped to avoid him. This evasive movement was too obvious, leaving Liam Cooper's hand awkwardly suspended in midair. "It has nothing to do with Ethan," she said. "It's just that we need to maintain some distance. After all, we're just friends. I have a boyfriend, and I need to consider his feelings." Liam Cooper's eyes reddened. "How can you say that?" he wailed. "Do you remember college? You said you'd take care of me forever," he cried, burying his face in Sophia Davis' shoulder. "Should I go explain to Ethan? It's all my fault. I made him misunderstand. Just don't ignore me, I'll do anything." Sophia Davis looked at Liam Cooper's upturned face, his eyes filled with pleading. She recalled those youthful promises and their reunion after Liam Cooper returned from abroad. Her heart did soften for a moment, but then, Ethan Hayes' resolute back as he turned and walked away flashed before her eyes. The man who once had eyes only for her truly didn't want her anymore this time. She eventually hardened her heart. "For now, let's not contact each other." With that, she practically fled, hurrying towards the elevator, not seeing Liam Cooper's face instantly darken after she turned away. The newly rented apartment was quiet. Ethan Hayes had a rare night of sound sleep. When he woke up the next day, his phone screen was already flooded with messages. At the top was Sophia Davis 99 plus missed call messages. "Ethan, where are you? Please answer your phone. Let's talk. Please, just text me back. At least let me know you're safe." The last one was sent at 6 a.m. "Ethan, I truly know I was wrong. Please, will you give me another chance?" Scrolling down, Ethan Hayes saw WhatsApp messages from Sophia Davis' friend. "Ethan, what's going on between you and Sophia? She's going crazy looking for you. You should call her back. Stop sulking. We all see how good she is to you." They said she was their mutual friend, but in reality, she was just Sophia Davis' friend. Every word she wrote favored Sophia Davis. Ethan Hayes stared at the title Ethan for a few seconds, suddenly remembering that he no longer had many friends. When they first started dating, Ethan Hayes used to hang out with his buddies every week. Later, Sophia Davis always said she wanted him to be with her every day, and he started canceling more and more outings. After he quit his job to become a full-time husband, his contact with his buddies completely ceased. Now, the only person Ethan Hayes could truly talk to was his roommate from that day. At the very bottom was a WhatsApp message from Liam Cooper, sent at 3 a.m. "Did you say something to Sophia Davis? Why did she suddenly cut ties with me? Is the real homewrecker between us?" Ethan Hayes didn't reply to anyone's messages, put his phone on silent, and tossed it into his bag, then walked into the new company's main entrance right on time. His new boss walked quickly out of the conference room. She was in her early 40s, wearing a sharp business suit. "Come," she said, "I'll introduce you to the team." She had presided over all 3 rounds of interviews and ultimately hired him, overlooking his career gap. After a brief introduction, Ethan Hayes went to his cubicle. His colleague next to him briefly explained the work process and important notes, her tone very patient. A day later, Ethan Hayes could already handle basic tasks independently, no longer needing to ask repeatedly. A week later, he worked smoothly with his team and completed assigned tasks on time. A month later, his boss assigned him his first independent project. After the Friday regular meeting, she kept Ethan Hayes behind. "Ethan," she said, "you really haven't disappointed me. It's truly excellent. Don't let a small mistake in your life make you doubt yourself. You deserve a better future." Ethan Hayes clutched the notebook in his hand, his heart filled with gratitude. She knew about his situation, but didn't press for details, simply affirming him like this. In the days that followed, Ethan Hayes fully immersed himself in work. His old phone would occasionally vibrate, with a few text messages from Sophia Davis flashing across the screen. Ethan Hayes blocked them every time. This continued until the agent called, saying the buyer wanted to purchase the house directly, and needed him to handle the handover procedures. Ethan Hayes stood before the familiar front door, taking a deep breath. He pushed the door open and froze. He hadn't expected it to be her. Sophia Davis was much thinner than when Ethan Hayes last saw her, with faint dark circles under her eyes, her suit jacket hanging somewhat loosely on her shoulders. The moment she saw Ethan Hayes, she abruptly stood up, knocking over a coffee cup on the coffee table, brown liquid spreading across the documents. "Ethan, I've been looking for you for so long. I sent you countless messages, called you countless times, and you didn't reply. I couldn't find you anywhere, so I had to contact the real estate agent to reach you." Ethan Hayes stood still, silently watching her. She took a step forward, then stopped, deterred by his gaze. "Liam Cooper and I broke up a long time ago." "Really?" she said. "I haven't seen him since that day. I know I was wrong. Can we go back to how we used to be? Seeing Ethan Hayes remain unmoved, Sophia Davis' voice suddenly choked, and she raised a hand to wipe away tears that had appeared unnoticed for the past 3 months. Ive regretted every day. We were so good together. Why did we end up like this? Please, let's get back together, Ethan. I really can't live without you. Ethan Hayes sighed helplessly, his tone so calm it was as if he weren't talking about his own affairs. The reason we reached this point was never Liam Cooper, he said. You're not unable to live without me. You're just used to my presence, used to being taken care of by me, used to my world revolving around you. Ethan Hayes paused. But Sophia Davis, I am human too, and I get tired. I also need to live my own life. Sophia Davis' face gradually paled. Ethan Hayes placed the property transfer agreement on the table. If you want the house, keep it, he said. This way, we'll be even. She stared fixedly at Ethan Hayes, her gaze holding a last trace of struggle. Ethan Hayes met her gaze calmly, without flinching. The air solidified for a long time. Finally, Sophia Davis' shoulders slumped, and she picked up the pen and signed the agreement. The sound of the pen scraping on the paper was heavy, as if she were using all her strength. Ethan Hayes collected the documents and turned to leave. Behind him, she said in a hoarse voice, "We'll transfer the money to you tomorrow." Ethan Hayes didn't look back, simply walking out of her sight. At the company's quarterly meeting, Liam Cooper attended as the representative of Ethan Hayes' company's partner. He was wearing a pink casual suit, and deliberately found fault with Ethan Hayes' proposal during his report. This idea is a bit too cliché, and the data support isn't sufficient, he said. Ethan Hayes stood up, and pulled up backup data. Mr. Cooper's mentioned data issue is detailed on page 17 of the appendix, he stated. As for the creative aspect, Ethan Hayes switched the slide. This is a similar case that won an award last week. The conference room instantly fell silent, his boss' lips curved slightly upward. While colleagues secretly gave Ethan Hayes a thumbs up in the corner, Liam Cooper's face clearly darkened. After the meeting, as Ethan Hayes walked into the restroom, Liam Cooper followed him in. He leaned against the sink, scrutinizing Ethan Hayes from head to toe, playing the part well. Aren't you? He sneered. Do you think you can just start over by changing jobs? Ethan Hayes turned on the faucet and washed his hands, calmly retorting, at least it's better than being a homewrecker. Liam Cooper abruptly straightened up. You? He spat. If I hadn't gone abroad back then, do you think it would have been your turn? He suddenly sneered. Do you know why Sophia Davis didn't come home on your birthday? Just because I said I was afraid of the dark. She stayed at my place all night to keep me company. And that time you had surgery. Ethan Hayes turned off the water and looked up at the mirror behind Liam Cooper. Sophia Davis was standing at the restroom door. Ethan Hayes hadn't seen her arrive, her face ashen. Liam Cooper turned his head, following Ethan Hayes' gaze, his expression instantly freezing. Sophia, what are you doing here? He stammered. Let me explain. Ethan Hayes didn't look at them again. He dried his hands and walked out of the restroom, hurried footsteps sounding behind him. Sophia Davis grabbed his wrist. Ethan, listen to me. Liam Cooper, wearing heels, rushed up and pulled her other arm. Sophia, what are you doing? He demanded. Why should you apologize to her? Sophia Davis violently shook off Liam Cooper's hand. You're the one who caused trouble between us, she retorted. Otherwise, Ethan and I wouldn't have broken up. Liam Cooper clutched his hand that had been pushed away, his voice suddenly rising. Me, so Discord. Who was it who called me every time they got drunk? Who was it who kept saying they couldn't forget me? Ethan Hayes took advantage of the chaos and walked towards the elevator. Still hearing them argue behind him, the elevator doors opened, and he quickly stepped inside. In the last second before the doors closed, he saw Liam Cooper raise his palm to slap Sophia Davis, while she awkwardly dodged, walking out of the building. The sunlight made Ethan Hayes squint. There was a coffee shop across the street. He pushed the door open and ordered an Americano. Through the glass window, he could still see the two struggling figures at the company entrance. By the time his coffee arrived, they were gone. Ethan Hayes took out his phone and blocked both Sophia Davis and Liam Cooper's numbers. From now on, they would no longer exist in his world. 2 years later, Ethan Hayes stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, arranging the potted plants in his new office. Sunlight streamed through the glass, casting a golden glow on the creative director nameplate on the wall. His phone vibrated. It was a message from his fiancée. Tomorrow I am marrying the person I love most. So excited. It was followed by a playful emoji, Ethan Hayes' lips curved upward unconsciously as he read her message. The night before the wedding, his roommate stayed with Ethan Hayes at his home. Just like in college, they sat on the couch, chatting from funny work stories to embarrassing college antics. Towards the end, he brought up Sophia Davis. "Did you hear?" he said. Sophia Davis was demoted from manager to the warehouse department because her performance didn't meet targets for 3 consecutive quarters. "She's been listless every day, and once at a team-building event, she drank too much and kept calling out your name, and there's more," he continued. Liam Cooper married a 60-year-old wealthy woman last year. It turns out she was simultaneously supporting 3 toy boys. Last month he went to court cheating and was pushed down the stairs by one of the toy boys, breaking his bone, and his wife actually sided with the toy boy. After he recovered from the fracture, he went to bother the toy boy again and ended up getting beaten up again. He's still in the hospital now. Ethan Hayes finished ironing his suit and glanced out the window. The moonlight was perfect. Tomorrow would be a clear day. "Go to sleep," he said. "We have to wake up early tomorrow." In the darkness, his roommate's breathing quickly became even. Ethan Hayes stared at the ceiling, his heart as calm as a still pond. Those people and events had long since disappeared along with his past self. The doors of the banquet hall slowly opened. Ethan Hayes stood on the stage, watching his bride walk step by step towards him. She wore a pure white wedding dress, her eyes shining as if filled with stars. The wedding dress was his own design, with countless roses embroidered on the skirt, symbolizing his endless love for her. As she reached the altar, Ethan Hayes carefully took her hand, small and soft. Under the pastor's questioning, he uttered those 3 words, "I do." These 3 words carried immense weight, but he would never say them to the wrong person again. The lights in the banquet hall gently cast down, and Ethan Hayes knew that this choice was the right one. After being demoted, work became particularly exhausting. After a busy day, passing by a mall on the way home from work, a giant screen was playing an interview with Ethan. He smiled at the camera, saying, "The key to success is knowing when to cut your losses." Whether in career or in relationships, Sophia Davis stood in the crowd, like a pitiful bystander. The moment the screen went dark, Sophia Davis seemed to hear again the day at the restaurant, him calmly say, "Sign it, let's part ways amicably." At the time, Sophia Davis thought he was just sulking. Only now did she understand that it was the last kindness he had shown her. That night, Sophia Davis dreamed of Ethan. In the dream, he was still as he was in college, wearing that white shirt, confidently speaking at the graduation exhibition. Sophia Davis walked over, wanting to take his hand, but he smiled and stepped back. "Sophia Davis," he said, "we ended a long time ago." She woke with a start at 3 a.m. Sophia Davis felt around for the sleeping pills in the drawer, and found a photo pressed at the bottom of the bottle. It was taken on their first date. On the back, in his neat handwriting, it said, "Hope to watch the sunset with you, every day from now on." The pills, swallowed with tears, tasted bitter and astringent. Sophia Davis learned the news of Ethan's marriage from a friend on the wedding day. "I stood on the second floor of the coffee shop across from the hotel, watching the scene inside through the floor-to-ceiling window. He looked exactly as we had imagined him during our visits to the bridal shop, dressed in a white suit, a simple 3-piece suit, adorned with a black bow tie. I remembered one time, we passed a bridal shop, and he pointed at the display window, saying, 'For our wedding, let's not have too many extravagant decorations, just sunshine, red roses, and our closest, loved ones.' Now, the ballroom was filled with red roses, and sunlight streamed down on him through the glass ceiling. The bride was a charming and lovely girl, tenderly adjusting his hair. I had done that countless times before he left home, and while he slept. Now, someone had taken my place, doing a better job than I ever did. I knew I had lost far more than I could have ever imagined.